Okay.
Go
Our
ahead.
mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are helpful to parents all around the world, and they are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not able to attend this meeting live can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. Welcome, everyone, and thank you both so much for being here. And I just want to add that I am so enjoying the book. And yes, everyone, there's another book you're going to have to get to put in the library that we all have. So thank you.
Yes, we're thrilled about the fact that you're here this evening. And I just want to say, first of all, that Stephen is not only a near-death experiencer, and this book that he writes about called The Place Between Here and There talks about that near-death experience. He's also a shining light dad. So he knows what it's like to be us. And he has an incredible story to tell. And Kathie as well was part of that story. She was cheering him on the whole way. And the way that they met, the way that they connected, especially after the near-death experience and all throughout, is so fascinating. So I think that the best thing for him to do is to go ahead and both Stephen and Kathie to talk about this themselves. And we welcome you here, and I'll turn it over to you, Stephen. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here, and thank you. And I have to send my love to my Kathie. She's up in New York, and so I'm so thrilled to have her on here. And I could see her, and such a thrill. And Kathie and I were actually working on another book, and so Kathie's been working real hard because that as we write our books, is that we work together very closely. But Kathie writes the narrative. She is extremely talented and just has a way of just expressing herself and what we have to share with everyone in such a very honest and very down home way. And so I'm very excited to be here, excited to have Kathie here. And so just thank you so much. I want to tell you a little bit about my experience. And so I'm just going to start in the beginning and go all the way through and just tell you a little bit about it. My name's Steve Weber. I Long Island, grew up on Long Island. I have the accent and everything. And I was a biker. I rode my Harleys. I loved Harley Davidson, and I was a computer guy, and I ran my own computer business. And I had 2 young children. But for the most part, I was focused on business. I was into computers, and so I was a good dad, but I was mostly focused on business and making ends meet. And of course, I loved my Harleys, and I went to the kids were very young at that time, and so I guess this was back in 2005, and so I went out on Long Island. There are bikers. There's Fire Island. And what was very popular is we'd ride our Harleys down Fire Island, and we'd meet at a bar, but it was just a meetup place where bikers would meet. You'd hook up with people, and you drive around for an hour. You'd zip around the streets, and you just have a lot of fun in the beach communities. And that was like a regular thing that we did. And one night I was driving home. It was 2 a.m. and we were up all, we're doing our, our biker thing. And I'm riding down the Meadowbrook Parkway. It's a parkway on Long Island. And I'm driving on my Harley Davidson. And all of a sudden I look to my left and I see a pickup truck is driving right next to me, going in the same direction. And I looked at it again. There was something very odd because between us, there was a guardrail. And I realized it looked like this guy was going the wrong way on the Meadowbrook Parkway at 2 a.m. in the morning. But I wasn't sure what I was seeing. My first reaction was it looked like a construction vehicle, and there were construction cones. I thought perhaps it was going the wrong way, like it was construction, like he was doing some sort of construction there. But then what happened was the guardrail disappeared, and there was no guardrail between me and this fella driving this pickup truck. And I realized if he realized he was going the wrong way, he might cut me off. So I wanted to make room for him to move over, and of course, to avoid getting into an accident with this fella. Just as I did that, he went underneath the bridge and went headfirst into a limousine. He killed the limo driver and a little 7-year-old girl. I was riding for about 30 years at that time. And so I've seen a lot of accidents on a motorcycle. And this was pretty crazy. I actually had to dive through the debris to just keep on going. And immediately there were people on the scene right away. And so I slowed down and I made sure that people were on the scene. And so I just kept on going. I wasn't involved. I saw what I saw, and that was it. At least that's the way I reasoned it out. I saw in the newspaper the very next day that they were looking for witnesses. And I didn't come forward because that people are always looking for witnesses. And the facts were clear. They had the guy, they had the victims. There wasn't anything in doubt. And so that was about the end of it. And then a year later, I opened up the newspaper one day and I saw there was a trial going on. And they were trying this guy for murder. Second-degree murder, not manslaughter, second-degree murder. And I realized, like, all of a sudden the gravity of what had happened that night had hit me. And so I called up the police. They came down to my house right away. They interviewed me, and next thing I knew, I was on the stand. I was on the stand for 2 days. And this attorney, the defense attorney, really drilled me pretty hard, but I was okay with it. I was in a computer business with my brother. So me and my brother, we chewed on each other all day long. So this guy and all his he didn't have anything. All his little salesman tricks weren't working. And I bared good witness. And they convicted that fella and gave him 16 years in prison. But I thought about that experience. I saw the parents, and I saw how it affected them, losing their child. And I saw how much everyone hated that defendant. And that I am sure that, I don't know, they hated him. Everyone hated him. There was no quarter for him. I felt very bad about that. I did. I'm sorry, I did. I felt bad about that. But I felt terrible for the families. And they were very bitter, and they were injured. They were all injured very badly. And I remember them, they were very upset. And after the judge had given the defendant 16 years, they called him a coward, the judge, because they didn't give him more. And I understood it. I really did, because they just lost their child. And he was actually a kid who was just driving. He was driving the wrong way. He did something terrible. But I remember those shattered lives, And I remember the looks of those families. And I remember the lost lives. And it's something that stuck with me for the longest time. And it changed my life because after that, I gave up my computer business. I was in business with my brother. I sold my interest to my brother and I got out of the computer business. And I became a full-time dad because I wasn't gonna, after what I saw what happened to that family, I wasn't gonna miss out on my kid's life. I wasn't. And so I ran a small little computer business out of my house and I became a full-time dad. I did hooked on phonics. I did hooked on math. I took him to all the music and all the athletics. Kathie would see me around town. I dragged the kids in tow with me everywhere. I ran for the school board. I won. And I became the acting president. I ran a school district with almost $100 million budget, all to reconnect not only with my children, but my town. Because this whole trial was going on, I had no idea. My head was in big politics and stuff that had nothing to do with my own hometown. And so I just changed my life. And this became my life. That's all I did. And that's how I first met Kathie. Kathie was one of the moms. She had a Girl Scout troop. And as the school board, I would bring them to activities and do things that school board people do. And so that completely changed my life. I became very involved in my local town and civic activities. I was Mr. Mayor. I mean, it's very easy to be famous in a small town, and I certainly had a certain degree of notoriety in mine. And so that's the way it went for a while. And I'd gone on with life, and I did think about that often, very often. There was a time that it was my first thought every day, and the last thought I thought about when I went to sleep at night, especially those parents, and the looks on their faces, and the grief, and the hatred which everyone felt. Maybe a little bit, but just, it was just awful. And so about, I guess it was about 10 years later, life was moving along. I'd settled down. It was very tough because that money was very tight, because I wasn't working as much. I was taking care of the kids. And so one afternoon, well, what I did often, like Sunday afternoon, after everything was done, I'd get on my Harley and I'd drive out east on Eastern Long Island and get some burgers and barbecue, and then drive back. It's like a 2-hour drive. It's great. And so on this particular spring afternoon, Sunday afternoon, middle of the afternoon, I was driving back. And what happened is that there must have been an accident or some emergency road work going on, because that the traffic was backed up for miles. And this Harley Davidson is very heavy. And I saw that people were driving on the side of the road and then making a right-hand turn up ahead to get out of the traffic. So of course I did that too. And it wasn't very smart, because when I came up to the intersection, a person coming the opposite lane made a left-hand turn in a pickup truck, a big SUV, and slammed right into the side of me on my motorcycle. Wow, the lights went out. I didn't know what hit me. And next thing I realized is I woke up, I was laying on my back, and I realized a lot of time had gone by because it was darker out, and there were a lot of lights and everything else. And I realized I must have been out for a while. And the first things I did is I tried to get up, and they all told me to stay down, but like I drove dirt bikes all my life. And so you'd fall down all the time. You would. I know it sounds strange. Even now I drive a little electric scooter. I fall down all the time, but you're used to it. I know it sounds strange, but you're used to it. And so the first rule is to get up or you're going to stay down. And so as I tried to get up, all the emergency workers were like, stay down, kind of like Rocky, Adrian, stay down. And but I didn't listen. I tried to get up, and wow, I felt the fragments of bone sticking into my hip. And I just felt this excruciating pain. And I just laid back on my back, and just the lights went out again. And the next thing I knew is I was soaring through the clouds. I was going up in the clouds. And I was thinking, I wasn't sure what I was thinking. And then I started coming down out of the clouds. And then I saw a big circle on the ground. And I realized I was landing at Stony Brook Hospital. And I was in a helicopter. No, I wasn't in a helicopter. I was outside a helicopter, kind of like you see in MASH on those things on the outside. I was outside the helicopter. And I was landing at Stony Brook Hospital, one of the most premier trauma centers in the United States. I'm a graduate of that university. My mom's a graduate. My daughter's a graduate. It's like an anchor of our community. And just as dumb luck, it happens to be one of the premier university trauma centers. And I was on the verge of death. I had profound injuries. I had my spine was broken. My hip was shattered. My leg was broken in several places. My arm was broken, my ribs, everything on this side, my head, just everything. But worst of all is I had this internal bleeding that was immediately life-threatening. And so over the next 3 days, they did several surgeries to stabilize myself, to stabilize my back so I wouldn't be crippled. At this time, they weren't even sure. So they drilled all these drills in my back, and the pictures are in the book. And they had to cut me open several times. I had to take out my spleen and just do a lot of crazy stuff. And then shortly after that, I almost lost my leg because the swelling cut off the blood circulation. So I had to do yet another surgery. And then to the rest of the world, I laid in my hospital bed in a coma for several weeks after that. But in myself, I was in another place, a place I've begun to call the place between here and there. And I spent in my many lifetimes there. And I learned certain things about life and the meaning of life. And I was so unaware of what this was going to prepare me for, both of these experiences. And so much of what I'm going to describe is what happened to me, and that I'm not preaching to anybody. I'm just describing my experience. And so I grew up as a Catholic on Long Island. So many of the things that I learned were presented to me in a way that I could understand. I believe the lessons are the same, but the way you're shown is more according to your background. So if somebody was a Hindu from India, they would experience different things, or someone from Israel or Russia or wherever. They would experience things according to their background, which will help bring out these understandings in them. But my experience is my way. So I just want to explain that so you understand. And so I want to explain what it was like there. And so one of the first things is that it was more like, it was like purgatory. Like Catholics have a purgatory. At least when I was growing up, they said if you weren't good enough to be with God, you go into purgatory for a little while, you learn some stuff, you pay your dues, and then you could be with God. And then it was kind of like that, but it was more like there wasn't any punishment. It was more like I was taught certain things, and I was preparing for certain things. At that time, I didn't know what. And so when I say time doesn't exist, it's not like the sun rises or falls, or you have appointments in the future, or water boils, or you cook food, or like things don't happen like that. The only sense of time passing is your experience, your spiritual growth in that place. And because that, if you weren't learning and growing, you couldn't tell the passage of time, because that you can think back into the way you thought a little while ago. And that gives you a sense and how much you've grown since then. And that gives you a sense of time passing. And so one of the first things is that I didn't know I was in any place different at first. I thought it was my regular life. It really was. Not very few things were different. But one of the first things that I learned, that I was taught, was how to see spirit in everybody and everything. And I didn't know I was being taught. What I think for the longest time after having this experience, I kind of called it the universe according to Steve. I laughed about it because I didn't think it was real. I thought it was just my imagination or the drugs or what have you. Yeah, you know, they give you stuff in the hospital to kill the pain. And so I just didn't really think it was, you know, there was a lot of things. So I just called it the universe according to Steve. But later on, as I began to learn about different spiritual teachings, I recognized it as something else. I recognized it as I began to share my experiences, and I began to receive certain knowledge from the all that is. And it wasn't that someone sat me at a table and said, okay, Stephen, open up to page 101. This is spirituality, start here. No, is that it spoke, and there's no it, there's no they, it's, I'll go into a little bit more detail, but it's the Om Namo Gurudev Namo. That's Sanskrit for I recognize or I bow to the inner teacher inside of you. It's a recognition that the only one who can teach you is yourself. People can bark at you and say things and demand things from you, but the only person who could teach you is yourself. And you have to observe and you have to learn, and you have to be able to learn from your own mistakes. That's really the key. And so the way they began to teach me first was how to see spirit is I saw someone from my past, is that it was a person that was it was just a person. It was just a person I dealt with for a few weeks. I'm a computer guy and it's just a person. But he hadn't aged in 20 years. You know, it's been 20 years, 30 years since I saw him. But of course I recognized him. I said, hey, what's up? But I mean, I really didn't say that. It was a different kind of experience that I was aware he was there. And that I knew he was he. And then so a little while later, I saw him again, but he had aged 30 years. And I was talking to him, I mean, in the way that it happens there. And then I recognized him. And I thought to myself, wow, this is the same person. How did that happen? And then what happens, that went on for a long time, is I began to see this fella in all different shapes and sizes and nationalities. And then I began to see him in different genders and all different ages. And at first, as I would talk to him or her, and I wouldn't know it was him at first, but then I would see a mannerism or I'd see a gesture, and then all of a sudden I'm like, hey, I know who that is. But then after a while, as time went on, I really didn't need to see those gestures. Like I began to feel like their presence. Like at first it was like 90%, I saw something, a little bit of energy, then 80%, then the 30, you know, it was like I was developing this sense of being able to see and feel this energy in him. And then what happened is I didn't even have to know he was there. Is that whenever he was around, as I felt his energy. And a couple of things came to mind to me then, is that I felt his energy and I felt this. And really, really what it was is that I was being shown your inner spirit, that part of you, which is always in spirit, that comes to earth to grow and develop through multiple incarnations. And that once I started to feel that spirit in him, I started to feel that energy all around. And I began to realize everything had a spirit. And there was a similarity to that spirit. I'm not just speaking people, I'm speaking stars and planet and the universe. We all had this common energy, this spirit. And I felt that in everything. And then I began to realize that we're all connected, that this energy, there's a similarity to this energy, but there's a uniqueness to each bit of energy. And what I began to feel for myself that everything, that science and spirit explain the very same thing. Whether you believe in the Big Bang or let there be light, it explains the same thing. The very creation and the very purpose of the universe, how we are created from a singularity, and how we've expanded out into the universe. And the galaxies have been created, and they live and they die and they transform. And we are living and creating, and we have experiences that we're learning and growing from. And we're adding them all to that wisdom of the all that is, part of that wisdom that I received in that place, and part of the wisdom that I gave up to that place. And then as I began to understand that, and understand that we are the universe, we are the creation, we are stardust. We are the same things what the stars are made of. And then I began to realize that I believe, and this is just my beliefs from what I saw and felt, is that I really believe that the creator and creation are one, that we aren't two, that we all are like cells in a body, like each cell makes up the human being. Each cell has its own life. It lives, it breathes, it does its reproduction stuff and all that. And all those cells make up you and your consciousness. Each one of those cells, they may not know of you, but all of them make up the consciousness. And that's what I think that I was being shown, is that I was being shown that all of us, all of our energy, all of the universe, everybody, that we are the creation and the creator, and all of our experience add to all of that wisdom and knowledge. And so this is what I experienced in that very first place. It was a place of learning and understanding. And it wasn't like there was a consciousness beyond myself that was driving the process. It was that as long as I kept on learning, things kept on happening. And then when I finally stopped learning, then I found myself in another situation. And this situation is where I experienced what is commonly referred to as a life review. And what I did is I reviewed my life, everything that happened in it, not as a participant, but not really as a voyeur, like standing there, like I don't know, what was that? The ghost of Christmas who was reviewing his life. No, it wasn't like that. It was like I was like an energy all around it. I wasn't there, but I was there, and I felt everything that was going on at the time as I went through all the scenes in my life. But things were different for this life review because first off, as I've been through it first. Second off, I'm a 50-year-old man. I have life experience. And so I have more knowledge that when those things happened. But most of all, now I could see spirit and sense spirit. And so now every situation I was in took on a different meaning. There was always a physical reason why things were happening, but there's always a spiritual reason why things were happening. And it was through those spiritual experiences that I began to learn and understand things in a new way. And I began to find that as I reviewed my life, some of the most terrible experiences in my life were the things that brought me the most bliss in that place. It really was, because that as I lived through these things in my life over again, and I began to understand them in a new way, that all of a sudden, I felt like a weight was lifted off me. I really did. Like you think about all the hatreds and animosities and jealousies you've had in life, and you think about all the shame and regret you have for yourself. What I began to realize is as I began to go through my life review over and over and over again, I started to realize that each time I did my life review, it was going to be a tough day. I was going to have to face some awful things in my life, some terrible things. But I knew by the end of the day, I would feel great because I would feel the weight lifted off my shoulders. People speak of being in this other place, like for them, it may be like that, but for me, it wasn't. Like they say, oh, there's rainbows and there's beautiful skies and there's puffy clouds. And that's what I mean. Everyone's experience is different for them. And that's how they felt the love and the beauty of it all. But what brought the love and the beauty to me was being relieved of all of these terrible emotions that I've developed over my lifetime that I never resolved because I couldn't face them, because I had a blockage and I was unwilling to relieve those blockages. I had so much invested in these things. But it wasn't until I began to do my life review over and over again that I really started to really understand things in life and really, really begin to find bliss. And I had such an urgency because it was addicting. The more I did this, the more blissful I felt. But also another thing is I learned as part of it is that I realized I couldn't have hate or animosity towards anybody who's done me harm. No, really, is I couldn't, because that as I went through my life and I came to terms with these things, is that they made sense now. And they brought me bliss. And so I just couldn't feel, no matter, like I had my life that I had these animosities, everybody has those, and all of a sudden they're gone. And that was just such a relief. And that was when I really, truly felt the love. And so, like in the first place, I said that that process of learning went on until I stopped learning. Then I went on to this next place where I did my life review. And that happened, that kept on going on and on. There was no consciousness above myself that was doing that. At least I didn't feel that. But it was as long as I learned, it drove the process. And when that stopped, I found myself in yet a third place. And when I recount this story, is that may sound odd when I say that it didn't seem like anything odd was going on. I look back at it and it's like, of course I knew this is crazy. I knew this was crazy. Like, I just don't know why it didn't occur to me. I think later on I could add a little something to that, why it makes a little bit more sense to me now. But it was just, I was just living in the moment. Like I went from experience to experience. It's not like the sun rose or fell, like clockwork, like that, unless it was part of an experience. And I just went from scene to scene. Like I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I didn't go to the bathroom. It wasn't like that. It was kind of like, it was like a stage, and it was the situation. I didn't even know if there was stuff on the outside because it wasn't part of what was going on. It was just the situation. And I just found myself going from situation to situation. I just dealt with it. I don't know. And then finally I was at this last place, and I was put in charge of these children, well, young adults, teenagers. And I had to teach them a task. And no matter what task I taught them, they wouldn't listen to me. And I give them tasks and they wouldn't do them. But I'd have these talks with them, like, I see you, you see me, come on team, red team, blue team. Okay, you get a prize, you get a prize. I did everything I could to try to get these kids to listen to me and work towards this goal. And no matter what, I couldn't do that. And so when I was at my wit's end, is I stood before who was in charge. And I realized something. I realized that I was standing before myself, not myself, Stevie Weber, but myself, my higher self, that part of me that is always in spirit, that just a part of me comes down in ignorance. And when I say down, I just say down, but comes down in ignorance to learn and to grow. And my past experiences are part of my intuition that I take with me. I come down in ignorance to make mistakes and to grow and to add to everything that is. And I began to understand that as I stood before my higher self. But it wasn't that my higher self was telling me anything. It was that And it wasn't like I was asking questions and my higher self was answering me. Is that I felt like when I was standing there, is that I felt I was in this grace, like I felt this understanding, this energy. I could tell that the spirit had been through so much in their life, in their experiences. And they are so evolved from that, from those experiences. And it was like just standing in that presence helped raise my awareness to what was going on. And it was then I realized is that I wasn't there to teach them a task, that these were spirits who had yet to have a human incarnation, and that I was there to shepherd them into their very first human incarnation. And this was a task I was failing at, because what was going on is I was taught how to see spirit. I was taught all of these lessons through my life review. I was taught about the internal spirit and how we're all connected and how there's physical reasons and spiritual reasons for everything. And the very first time I got to apply that, all I saw was kids. I didn't see real spirits who were just as much as incarnated as I was. That I just looked at them as kids. I didn't use any of this knowledge that I had learned to really understand why I was there to shepherd these kids into their human incarnation. And once I came to that understanding, everything, it was just a very beautiful experience. It was very difficult to describe. And then at the very last place I found myself is that I lived in a community in Kings Park, Long Island. It's a working class neighborhood. We're surrounded by all rich people, but in this little town, we're a working class because there was one industry in town. That industry closed down like 20 years ago, but most of us stayed. So we still have those very blue collar roots. So we go to the seashore at sunset and we watch the sunset. We drink coffee, or some people drink out of red Solo cups that aren't coffee. We talk about who's doing who in town and the latest gossip. And that's a regular thing, and most small towns, I guess. And so when I was in this place, I found myself sitting there with two old friends of mine, Joe and John from town. And we'd watch the sunset every day. And so like I said, the sun didn't rise and fall there, but if the sun was part of an experience, then you would see it. And so that's what the sunset was, part of our experience every day. And so this went on hundreds of times. I mean, I don't know how many times, but closer to infinity than to one. Let me say that. And I would sit down with these people, with these two fellows, and watch the sunset. And John was a great guy. He was I lived in a town. You were either Irish, Jewish, or Italian. So these were the Irish guys. And John, he was the voice of God in church. When he did the readings, he was like, and Jesus said, and the walls would shake. And he was such a lot of fun. And he had diabetes and he was always suffering from these infections in his legs and stuff. But he never let that get him down. And then Joey, he was from town too. Both of these guys were in the late 70s. And Joey had dove in the bluff and broke his back. And in the 60s, they actually put plates in him and he walked around like Frankenstein for the rest of his life. But he didn't let that. He had an Irish brogue and he told a good tale, and he was a great guy. And so one day when I'm sitting with them, I realized that they had both passed earlier that year. And that was like a red pill moment for me. Is that all of a sudden, like, I now reviewed everything that had just happened to me over this period of time. And I'm sitting here with Joey and John, and I know they can't be here. And so I just had this sense of urgency to ask them, why are they here? But for some reason, I didn't want to ask them. I'm not sure why. But that went on time and time again. And each time I sat with them, it wasn't fun anymore. I just kept on thinking, why are they here? Like, how could they be here? And so I wanted to ask them, why are you here? And this went on for a long time. And each time I saw them, this sense of urgency like grew and grew until it finally got to the point that I felt if I didn't ask them this very moment, I would never get the chance to ask them again. And in the way that I communicated, I asked them, what are they doing here? They said, they're here to make sure I'm okay. And I thought that was just so odd because I felt fine. I didn't realize I was in any accident. I'm walking, I'm talking, I'm doing everything. And I'm just sitting there pondering that. And so as I'm sitting there pondering that, I'm watching the sunset. And then as it would normally dim, it just got brighter and brighter. Shielded my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, I was in my hospital bed. My mother was holding my hand and she was telling me that I had been in a terrible motorcycle accident. And I'd been out for a very long time. And, but I was going to be okay. And I was certain she was right. I was. I know, I really was. It was so weird because I had all these tubes in me and I was intubated and I was tied down. And I was tied down and I wasn't sure what would have happened to me. But as I sat there with these tubes in my throat, as I began to think about that place between here and there, and I began to think about, there was this lady there, who was in when I was dealing with the kids. And all this lady did was pray. And I couldn't understand, I couldn't understand because everyone had a purpose there. But it didn't seem like she had a purpose. Like all she did was pray. Like I couldn't hear the words really, but it was like the words didn't matter. It was almost like, let me take a sip. It was almost like the words were a highway under which this energy traveled. And it was this energy that I felt coming from this spirit of such a love and a light. It was like, I don't know how to describe it. It was distracting, but yes, it was empowering as well. And now when I'm sitting there in my hospital bed, I could see spirit. I know who that lady is. That's a friend of mine. I recognize her energy. And so the first thing I did, as soon as I got my phone, I was still intubated and I had the intubation out finally. And then I got my phone and I texted this person and I said to them, I said, thank you for visiting me when I was out, if you know what I mean. And all of a sudden I got a text back right away. And she said, you know? And I said, yes. I said that I've been to a place that I know that we share a connection that goes beyond this world. And I know things and I want to share them with you, and come to the hospital and see me tomorrow. And that person is my co-author, Kathie. Kathie, what did you think when you got that message?
That was a complete eye-opener for me because I had always been a very spiritual person, and I had lost my mother and my twin brother at an early age, and I needed to know how to connect to them. So I read every book I could get my hand on, by Dr. Raymond Moody or Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, or anyone who wrote a book about afterlife, near death, spiritual transformation. I read the book and I knew that I could contact them. So I had a lot of success in contacting my mother and my brother, but I knew that when Steve wasn't in his body, he was in that other place, because that's where spirit goes when it's not in the physical. So I communicated by saying, I'm gonna pray for you. So pretend I'm in the hospital room because I can't go to the ICU. I'm not next of kin. And I said my prayers, and I said this every day. every day until he got out, and he sent me that text. And what was amazing about it is it validates that communication is possible between us and our loved ones, because most of the times when you communicate with people on the other side, you get signs, synchronicities, maybe you hear voices. They don't physically come back and then tell you that that happened, because they stay on the other side. This was more validating because Steve came back from that side and said, I heard your prayers. I felt your energy. I saw your higher self. So that is like the most amazing proof of the continuation of consciousness, of the connection of all of us, and the fact that our loved ones, even though they're not here, they still are alive. And we are still connected to them. And it was just the most beautiful experience.
And so I bet when you came to the hospital the next day, I told you everything, right?
No.
You know, because it was because like shortly after that, is that I didn't talk about the place between here and there too much. Is that I really thought of it like the universe according to Steve, is that I really didn't think it was real. And Kathie didn't push me too much. At that time, we were friends, but we, you know, friends. And so I knew her, but not know her like that. That's why it was odd. Like when I sent her the text, I expected like her to say you're messed up, but no, I really didn't expect that, because I knew Kathie, and so she had mentioned some things. I knew she would be at least open to it, or at least I could blame it on the hit on the head later on. And so, but that was it for a while. Is that I just I worked really hard to get better, and Kathie's like the Energized. She's an athlete, and so she just, first off, she punches like a man, so don't mess with her. And she's like an athlete, and so she really helped me. You know, she was like half Sergeant Slaughter and half Mother Teresa, and you know, she really. And I was committed. I wanted to get better, because I tell you, I felt this strength. I felt this almost like a surety that I knew that if I worked hard, I would get better. I remember the nurses chasing me around rehab and telling me to get back in bed, and I was sure. And Kathie, I didn't want to face Sergeant Slaughter over there either. And so I just really wanted to work hard. And then it came to me one day, Joey and Johnny, when they were telling me that they were there to make sure that I was okay, they weren't talking about there. They were talking about here. You see, Joey, he broke his back. My back is broken. John, he died of an infection in his leg. My leg is mangled and infected. They were my spirit guides. That's what they are. They were my spirit guides to help me through this next transition of my life, to help me to understand this experience. And it wasn't that they were there to saying one more push-up, Steve. You know, that was Kathie's job. But I felt this energy. I felt like this knowledge. I felt like I'd been through it before. Like I was feeling like their energy, like in the same way, like Kathie was sending me her energy, like to help me there. Like I was receiving energy. They weren't telling me what to do, and they weren't spirit shields. They weren't shielding me from things. But when things happened, they gave me that understanding to help me put one foot in front of the other when perhaps I wouldn't otherwise. And when that didn't work, Kathie was there. And so that was the way it was going for a while. It was, you know, things were getting better. I really didn't talk about the place between here and there too much. And Kathie and I starting to become closer because, you know, that experience, wow. You know, connecting in that place. And because even at this part, there was a part of me that was starting to think that perhaps this was real. And so that's the way it was for a while. And then one evening, I found my son, Nicholas, dead from a heroin overdose. And I tried to revive him because it was close. And Yeah, the world came crushing down. It was, I mean, you all know. And I live in a small town. Every piece of equipment came down from that firehouse. Everything backed up for miles. Everybody coming to try to help my son. Whereas high school friends who was on the wrestling team with him and the football team with him, because they all joined the fire department afterwards. And then I thought, it's just coming to terms with everything. And I thought about my lifestyle, because I like beer, I like Harley Davidsons and rock and roll, and I like being an old personality, but those things weren't so funny now, And I looked at myself and the things that I did in life, and I really thought, like, where did I go wrong? And I know I was so far from a perfect person, but I was a hard worker, and I was good. I might not have known all the things that dad should do, but I always made sure I took my kids with me. I kept them safe, warm, and dry. I always had food with them. I would take my daughter to get her nails done, and I'd sit there and I'd wait with her, and I just, like, it was I did hooked on phonics all those years just to keep him out of special ed, because he was on the spectrum. It was something that I probably didn't face, but I was able to teach him all these things over the years. And so he was able to prosper, and he wound up being a New York State championship wrestler, New York State champion. And he played the piano like Mozart. He played the saxophone like Dizzy Gillespie played the horn. He played the guitar like Jimi Hendrix. We played together. That was all gone now. And I don't know if I felt it was my fault, but I definitely felt that, what the hell did I do wrong? And I knew at least I felt. I had a list, no problem. Plenty of things on that list what I did wrong. And that's the way it went for a while, is that, it's a very difficult time. And Kathie, she was very sweet. She would walk with me every day, and we'd go on these long hikes. And she would, sometimes I wouldn't say a word. She wouldn't say a word either. And I didn't talk about the place between here and there. Every once in a while I might say something, and then I'd say some deprecating humor after it, and like look to try to get her reaction to see probably how weird I was or anything. But anything, she never had that kind of reaction. She had the lady in the other place reaction. I always felt that loving energy coming from her, never anything else. Only when I forget to take out the garbage, do I? But so that was it. And then and it's just such a difficult thing. And one day we were walking, and it was almost like a year after. It was quite some time after losing Nick. And Kathie said to me, "Has Nick ever tried to contact me?" And I thought to myself, I don't know, that kind of pissed me off. I mean, it did, because I was wrenching with this, and she's asking me if my son tried to contact me. Like, I was dealing in the here and now, and she's pulling this, I don't know. But of course, I'm like, no, honey, no, honey. And she pulls out this little statue of Saint Teresa she had in her purse. I don't know where she got it. She's a saint girl. She likes saints, and so she loves the saint and Saint Teresa. And so she had a Saint Teresa statue. So she puts it down next to a tree and takes a pen out, like a Sharpie, and writes on a rock, "Nick, we love you, say prayers," and puts it there, and then puts the Sharpie there. And she says, "Well, we'll believe this here." And so we come back a few days later, and we see there's like 50 rocks there. Everybody with writing saying, some people just say silly things. Other people say, "I need a job." Other people are praying for lost loved ones, or for sickness, to be relieved from them, or other things. And then we come back a few weeks later, and it's just hundreds. It just got big, and people were posting pictures on Facebook about it, and we were posting pictures on Facebook. And when I saw all those rocks with all those prayers, the first thing is I thought, like, oh, everyone has problems. But then I thought, whoa, I kind of like felt that energy from the place between here and there, and like some of the lessons that I learned. And no, not everyone has problems. No, we are in this together. We are all experiencing this together. We're here to help each other and to experience that. And the things that we go through, as terrible as they are, we all share that. We will share those things. And so it kind of like reminded me of the Sting song, Message in the Bottle, when he talks about he's having all these sorrows in the world, and he puts a message in a bottle and he casts it out to the sea, and he's waiting for his answer to come back. And instead of getting an answer, he gets 10,000 bottles with problems in them as well. And he too realized that we're not alone in the world, and that's our strength. And for the first time, I kind of felt peace from that. It was almost like knowing I had all these people and we're in this together. And that was the first step that I really started to come to that understanding that wow, maybe that place between here and there may not all be in my mind. Maybe there were some things there. And this is the point I started to open up to Kathie a little bit. I started to share a little bit about some of the things. And Kathie was always a big spiritualist. So she could always tell me, oh, this author said that. I was like, she always knew, she always told me what I was saying. She would cross-reference it to that and that. And I'd say, Kathie, that's BS. It's just Stevie making up stuff. And she would say, no. And so, but that's the way it went for quite some time. Is that I was getting better, and I was just starting to come to terms with Nick a little bit, and then one day my cousin goes to a psychic medium, and she sits down to connect with her lost relative, but instead of connecting to her lost relative, she asks, the medium says, there's a Nick here who wants to come through. Do you want to allow Nick to come through? And she says yes. What happened next, Kathie?
Okay, well, I got to go back a little bit.
What?
On the anniversary of Nick's passing, we were out and we would find roses every day for like 7 days. And I said, I just had this feeling that meant something, because the last time that it happened was when my brother passed, and I got silver hearts every day for a week. So I said, Steve, there's something to this. And he was like, no, people just leave roses behind. I'm like, no, they don't. I said that every day for a week. That's like, what are the odds?
Well, it's Valentine's Day.
So then when his cousin went to the psychic medium, and I happened to be friends with his cousin as well, she was communicating with me immediately after this reading, and she said the psychic said that Nick has a synchronicity with Saint Teresa, and he's sending roses. Now, Lisa didn't know what had gone on, but I did. So I was saying like, oh my God. I mean, not that I didn't know it, but I figured I could take this information to Steve and then he would believe it. And he still didn't. But she said that Nick's passing day Nick's birthday and Saint Teresa have the same, they share the same birthday. So when he said he has a synchronicity with Saint Teresa and he's sending the roses, the synchronicity was that they have the same birthday. And so I thought that, this would convince Steve, but it didn't. It wasn't until we went to the shrine that I made for Nick that we had a prayer card, and it said that Nick's passing day and Saint Teresa's canonization day were the same day. So not only did they share the synchronicity of the birthday and that passing day, and that he's sending the roses, that's when Steve is like, well, maybe there's something to this. And I was like, of course there's something to this. Nick has been trying to let you know he's okay. And he couldn't reach Steve because Steve wasn't open to that. So he went through me and Steve's cousin Lisa, who was also open to it. So once Steve validated that sign, then the floodgates of signs opened up, because once spirit knows that you're receptive and you're in a vibration at which you could get those signs, they just come rapid fire. And then we were getting signs like every day. It was amazing.
Well, because the dates, I'm a computer guy. And so for Nick and Saint Teresa to both share the same birthday on January 2nd, and then for Nick to have passed on Saint Teresa's canonization day, May 17th, I could do the math. That is just so gosh darn odd. And then Kathie just had that Saint Teresa statue in her car. She didn't know anything. She just had that. And how is this connection? Like, how did all this happen? Like, I was really starting to question that. Like, and then that night is when I laid down to bed, I had this oddest dream, is that I felt that Nick was here with me right now. And that none of this happens. I mean, I got that feeling like everything was okay. But I saw my son in such whoa, it was like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was all this light and beauty and I was like, oh, this has just been a terrible dream. This whole thing that had happened. And then when I woke up, I realized it wasn't a dream, that this all did happen, but it was okay. That I think I came to the realization that my son is in the place between here and there. And I really began to understand that that place between here and there is to help you transition into spirit in the same way that your spirit is born into physical body. It's a process by which you come to return to spirit. So I was first taught certain lessons. Then I was taught to understand my life and get the most out of it. Then I was tested to see if I had learned my lessons, and something interfered with this. It was that the doctor saved me. Is that I think that this death process is like an automatic process where your spirit transitions into spirit. And I felt that bliss in that place. And I understood that my son was feeling that bliss too. He was, because it was the most blissful experience, and that he was learning and growing and understanding in the same way that I was. And in my own mind, I think what that visit was to say goodbye. Was to say goodbye for now. And that he was passing into spirit. And that the next time we would see each other, it wouldn't be as Stevie and Nikki, and it'd be as spirits in our true selves. And everything will make sense. And that day is coming. It's going to be in the distance. But once I began to understand this, that life is eternal and that communication does happen, is that all of a sudden, I felt this weight lifted from me. It was almost like, I don't know, when I say all of a sudden, that's a little exaggeration, but it happened very quickly, that all of a sudden the realizations came to me one after another, is that I started to realize that my son is happy and I could be happy too. And that you remember the first time, at least I remember the first time I laughed after losing my son. I cried. I did. But now I didn't feel that anymore. All of a sudden, anytime I thought of my son, I always thought about the circumstances of his death. I did. We had such great times together. We traveled all over the country going to all these wrestling meets. He had 20,000 people on their feet cheering for him. We had such these awesome experiences. And for such a long time, as I lost all that. And what this did is that it relieved me of those blockages, that all of a sudden I got my son back. I really did, is I got my son back. Is that now, when I thought of him, I thought of all those fun times. I thought of all those things. I thought of all I felt bad for the things that we would miss. But now, knowing that I have this connection with my son that is deeper and stronger than any connection that I don't know. I just don't know. But wow. But one of the things that I had to put a stop to right away is the people in my town. Is every time I saw them, they had such sadness in their eyes. And they loved my son and they felt such grief, but they didn't want to talk to me. They wouldn't tell me anything about their children. And so I made sure I put an end to that. I got one of Nick's wrestling medals, his state championship. I found his football coach at the local pub. I put it on his neck. I gave him a big hug and kiss. I told him, no more of this. We are going to, and I asked him to tell me all about his son. And he started weeping uncontrollably. He kept on trying to tell me about his son. And then we just had a big cry. Everybody in the bar, we did. We had a big cry. We just really, and ever since then, I don't see those looks of sadness because there was sadness in their eyes, but there's always something else. For the grace of God, it wasn't them. And that makes them feel bad. And I wanted them to relieve them of that burden. And so now, anytime I see them, it's the first thing I say, how's your kids? How's your kids? I want to know. I want to be invited to all the way. I talk to them. I've got to hear it. I got to hear that because that's what's bringing me through this. And so, but when I said I was closed to communication, and Kathie, it frustrated Kathie so much because she was open to that communication, but I didn't want somebody to, okay, everybody has their own things, but I felt I had this relationship with my son, is that I didn't want some stranger interpreting my son for me. I didn't want to go to a psychic medium. I wanted to reach my son myself. And so it was just a process. And but once I relieved myself of those blockages, I started getting messages. And at first I started to dismiss those messages. And Kathie was saying, Steve, you released your blockage. You're receiving, you're seeing things. Those are real. And I kept on saying, no, Kathie. She kept on bonking me on the head and doing this crazy stuff. But she was very patient. And so while we were writing the book, it was right in the middle of this crazy health crisis where we've been dealing with for the last couple of years. And so Kathie and I to get a break from writing the book because we would talk about each chapter and we do the outline, but Kathie's the one who creates the narrative. So she has a lot of pressure on her. And so we would walk on the beach and she would send healing energy to the world. And she would go through one of her favorite saints, Saint Germain, the violet flame, and she would pray to global healing. And so first off, if it wasn't for Kathie, things would be a lot worse. So I'm very grateful. But also is that she would ask for a sign from spirit that spirit had heard her. And so today she asked for a piece of violet beach glass. Beach glass, it rolls up on the beach. It's kind of cool and people make jewelry out of it. The chances of finding violet beach glass are zero. You can find hen's teeth. You'll find a diamond ring on a mountain of rocks before you will find violet beach glass. And so I was like, all right, so I know she's going to have the puss face at the end of the day. So I'm trying to think of inspirational things to say to her to make her feel better about not finding the violet beach glass. And so we're all done with our walk. We're walking out of the thing. And just out of nowhere, this little Dalmatian puppy Dalmatian with the little black spots, the fire, 101 Dalmatians, a Dalmatian comes running over and jumping over me and Kathie, going, licking and everything else. And the owner comes running out of nowhere. Oh, I'm sorry. And we're laughing and we're encouraging the dog on. And we're like, no, we love dogs. We got 2 of them and everything else. And I'm laughing and everything else. And I say, I look up to her. I look her in the face. I say, what's the dog's name? Violet. And so we sit there, we talk to her for a couple more minutes, and I'm sitting there, I could barely contain myself. And so I'm walking away with Kathie, and she has a puss face on. And she said, I don't have Violet beach glass. I was like, Kathie, the dog's name's Violet. That's your sign, Kathie. And I mean, of course, she got it right away. But she asked for Violet beach glass, and she gets a dog, a Dalmatian puppy that no way could this dog be named Violet that is named Violet. And so Kathie says, and I say, Kathie, that's a sign. And she says, yes, it is. I said, no, we have to find that lady again. That is a sign from spirit. I know it is. We have to get to the bottom of this. A couple of weeks later, we see the lady on the beach again, the dog. Kathie goes running up to the lady. Kathie's not shy. She tells her the whole story, and she expects the lady to go crazy, throw holy water on her, do whatever. The lady greets us with open arms. We talk to the lady. She lost her son under very tragic circumstances. How does that happen? We became very good friends. And of course, Stevie thought I was helping her. No, these things are a two-way thing. And I developed a really good friendship. Kathie, I love Kathie. Next thing I know, we're going over this lady's house. I'm giving her weights. So, she likes to exercise too with the pen. It was just a lot of fun. But that is a sign from spirit, from my son and her son, to get us together, to get us to talk together. There's no way I'm sorry, there's no way that's an accident. There's no way. And it was just such a wonderful experience. I asked her, how come you named the dog Violet? She said that, what was it? Gone with the Wind was her and her son's favorite show, movie, and they liked Scarlett's violet dress. And so they named the dog Violet, but they spelt it like Scarlett O'Hara's name. So it's just a very cute thing. And so those are the things that this sort of messages I began to receive. And once I began to open it up and I was released myself of those blockages that was stopping me from really understanding my son and our connections and things. Once I opened up, then I began to see signs all the time. The fella who sold my son drugs, went on trial for murder, second-degree murder. Very same charge for the fella that I stood witness against so many years before. Very same charge. And they felt they had a very good case against this fella because that my son had no other drugs in his system. It wasn't that it's just a short time. We were just beginning to discover that he was involved in this. It was just it was short time for us. It just happened so quickly. And so I went to the trial. And I saw that defendant there. And oh boy, I was marching down to that courtroom. I wanted vengeance. I really did. I got into that courtroom. I took one look at that defendant. Poof. I didn't feel any vengeance at all. I didn't. I felt sorry. Not sorry that, oh, he's such a pitiful guy. I felt sorry for him to be in this state. Like, I didn't feel that anger for my son, is that I felt that I wanted him to stop doing what he was doing. I wanted him to make good on the terrible things that he had done. And I wanted him to, but also to have an opportunity to make a life for himself and his possible children, and to be a good and loving husband, and to be a good and loving father, and to raise kids. You want to make me happy in life? You feel like you have something to owe me? Live a beautiful life. And someday when you pass, you're surrounded by all your great grandchildren holding your hand. That'll bring me peace. And I remember telling my friends that, and some of my friends were outraged with me. But then I thought back to that trial and everything that I experienced there. And then I thought about my life review. And then I don't recall like anything specific, but I bet you that whole experience with that trial and seeing the parents and seeing all those things, I bet you that was part of my life review. I bet it was. And I bet you I learned from that. I bet you I did. And that's why I couldn't feel anything but love. I know it's a difficult thing to say, but it is. And I guess that's what that experience taught me in that place, is that I spent all this time thinking that this whole experience was about a near-death experience, but it wasn't. It was about my son, and coming to terms with that and being prepared for this. All these things, like Kathie and I, we look back at all these things that happened and we just scratch our heads like, how could all this have happened in the way that it did? It is just so bizarre. But still it happened. And the one thing that I've come to understand from that, the many things, is that life is good and people are good, even when very sad things happen. And to come to that understanding, it takes a long time, and there are no shortcuts. You got to feel the pain. You have to go through everything. But if you make it, it's worth it. It's worth it. Your life is about experiences. And if it wasn't about those experiences, I'd have nothing to do in the place between here and there, because I had nothing to do for my life review. So my advice to you is to live life, to feel life, to cry when you want to cry, to laugh when you want to laugh. Don't go on a mountain and be a guru and pray all day and eat two things of rice. I mean, if that's really what you want to do in life, that may be your path in life. But really go out and live life. You can't take gold with you. You can't take anything with you except your experiences. That's the very reason for life, is these experiences. And so each day I go through each day, and I'm a happy person. I am. But I have my moments, and I call it my spiritual garden. Is I got to weed it. I got to fertilize it. And I got to take care of it, because what happens is that if I let the weeds grow, my life gets pretty crazy, and I get sad, and things happen. And so Kathie reminds me that she helps me to keep my garden weeded and fed, and keep on the trail, because my son is always with me. I'm receiving messages, and I'm living life, and I'm loving, and I'm learning. And this is the message that Kathie and I have shared with you tonight. And I hope that sharing this in some way, could just give you something to think about. Everyone has their own ways of meaning and doing this, but we're just very happy now and just living day to day. And Nick is with us every day, but life is good and people are good, even when very sad things happen. And so I'd like to thank everybody for being part of our presentation tonight. And I really enjoyed spending time with everybody. And I spoke before helping parents heal for the very first time in the villages. And when Kathie and I began this journey, like I said, we thought it was about an NDE, and we realized it's about so much more. And And so we're working on our second book. It's called Lessons Learned Between Here and There. And we're going to release that soon. And then the first part where I described that first accident I was involved in, and we're also going to write about that and incorporate that into the whole big understanding of this experience, and just trying to share the love and life with everybody. And Kathie, what did your mom tell you was the ultimate mission in life, the ultimate meaning in life? Tell the mom story.
I had a visitation from my mom after she had passed, when she came to me, and she, at that time when she passed, she was 58, but when I saw her, she was about 30 and radiant, and she just appeared in the kitchen, and she said, she was about to walk out the door, and I said, Mom, I said, where are you? What are you doing? I said, come back. And she turned around and she looked at me and she said, thank you for calling out to me, because I can't come to you unless you seek me. I'm not allowed to come to you unless you do that. So now that you've sought me, what do you want to know? And I said, everything. I said, tell me what what religion do I have to be? What do I have to do to get to where you are? Because I need to be with you again. And she said, you don't have to do anything. I said, but I have to be like a certain religion, right? And she said, no. She goes, everybody is the same. She goes, the reason why you come to earth is to learn to love and to be loved. It's that simple. And she goes, you need to tell people. And I was so struck by that, because that's what the masters have told us all the time. Jesus said that the love is the greatest gift. Every deity put before every religion on earth says the same thing. And yet we have such a hard time with that. But in truth, that is the ultimate goal of life, and love is everything. So love makes the world go round.
Love is the ultimate intelligence, and I'm going to try very hard to be smart. But thank you very much. And if anyone had any questions, we'll be glad to answer any questions. But I'm going to have to put on my glasses because I can't see
I
anything.
have to just tell you that everyone is saying thank you to both of you, and we've kind of run over, but I want to
Sorry.
let you know that this has been an absolutely wonderful presentation. I know that Nick is not only happy, healthy, and whole, but he's also with all of our kids, and they're having a blast together. And I am so appreciative of you explaining that place between here and there to everyone, so that everyone can know about this and understand that this experience, like Dr. Mary Neal's as well, was one to teach you how to be able to move forward and heal after the passing of your son. And anyway, I appreciate you guys being here. I will send you the chat box in an email as well, so that you'll be able to see it. And if anyone has any questions, I did write their email a little bit further up, but I'll be putting it in the information on the YouTube video so that everyone will be able to see that as well. And what we always do before we say goodbye is to ask everyone to unmute and say thank you and goodbye. So if all of you would like to do that, please do so.
Yes,
And
thank you. This was
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So uplifting, so
Thanks.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Special time tomorrow.
It's been
Let you know.
very, very
Thank you.
special.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Love and light.
Good night.